And right now we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Katie Greifeld taking you through to that closing bell with a global simulcast. Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec join us from the radio booth. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms.
Everybody.
Carol Massar, everyone, well, almost everyone, you know who you are. But it is green across the screen today. Once again, Carol, with most of the major indices at record highs.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of interesting to see that. I've been looking at the semiconductor names. They are really atop the major indices in terms of outperformance. The stocks, folks, just up about 2% here as we are just a few minutes away from the closing bell.
Typically, I'd talk about how, tomorrow's payrolls print will be an important one to watch. We're likely not going to get that as a result of the government shutdown. Instead, we're talking about some data from Challenger Gray in Christmas today, Katie, that shows this kind of no hire, no fire environment happening in the job market out there right now.
Yeah, it's a conversation that we're having, this urgency that's been placed on alternative sources of data and how complete of a picture you can put together about this economy when you look at all those different sources. And it seems like, of course, the answer has been that the official government data is still the gold standard, but we're not going to get that.
Yeah, just real quickly, too, just to point out to our viewers, seeing some headlines crossing the wire right now on Boeing. The shares they're still in the green, but took a little slight leg down here. Now learning that 777X is said to slip into 2027, which, of course, would drive an additional billions of dollars in charges here. We're going to keep an eye on that story. But no matter where Boeing goes right now, the markets are still going to finish the day in the green and finish strong as they would. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up roughly about 100 points or about 0.2%, but that's going to be good enough for a record high. The S&P 500 only up about 5 points or about 0.1%, but that's also going to be good enough for a record high. The Nasdaq Composite and Nasdaq 100 each up about 0.4% to a record high, and the Russell 2000 closing higher by about 16 points or 0.7%, just about 10 to 15 points or so away from its last record high.
All right, and then when you dip back into the S&P 500, you do see slightly more names gaining ground on this Thursday, Katie. 278 names in the S&P 500, higher today, 221 to the downside, 4 unchanged.
All right, let's take a look at the sector level as well and see what the story is there. Take a look at the circle. And once again, information technology, your tech names are the biggest points contributor there. But you also saw some signs of life when it comes to communication services, industrials, materials. Those are your 4 sectors that finished in the green. What didn't do too hot today, consumer discretionary, energy, also consumer staples, dragging us to the downside. But when you have information technology showing up in such a big way, you're going to see things generally be green.
All right, let's get to some of the individual gainers. And I got to say, it's not names that I necessarily talk about a lot. Fair Isaac. All right, just before you judge, listen up. Fair Isaac, the ticker FICO, FICO. That one up as much as 32% in today's session, finishing with a gain of just shy of 18%. This surging #1 gainer in the S&P 500 after saying it will now sell credit scores directly to mortgage resellers. So it's a move that sent shares of third-party credit bureaus, Equifax and TransUnion plunging. So some changes there in that dynamic and selling of credit scores. Here's another one we don't talk about a lot, guys, but it caught my attention. It has to do with Microsoft's deal with the neo-cloud company Nebius Group, NV. It's going to provide computing power to internal teams creating large language models and a consumer AI assistant, according to folks familiar. So the arrangement, which is worth about $19.4 billion, sparked a rally in Nebius shares. Again, ticker NBIS. We don't talk about it a lot. Up just about 9% in today's session. This deal apparently outlined in early September.
Yeah.
But the announcement, there wasn't a lot of the specifics on it. When it was announced, though, the shares in the U.S., the ADRs, jumped about 50% on September 9th.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm into the story. I mean, good one, Carol.
Well, because the ADRs are up 335%.
But it gets to this idea, sort of like, of the idea of what options these companies have. I mean, we had the CoreWeave CEO on last week, and there was this whole idea that they were kind of, to a certain extent, the only game in town. Obviously, we know there are other companies, including Nebius and a couple others, but not a whole lot to go around, particularly when you take into account just how much capacity a company like Microsoft or Meta or Alphabet needs.
Right. So they're searching, right? Hence these neo-cloud companies certainly stepping up. Hey, one more, too. I think I mentioned it yesterday. AST Space Mobile. This one has been on a tear, rallying in the last couple of days, up another 16% today after gaining 16%.
Did you guys interview the CEO earlier?
The president, actually.
The president, okay.
It's really kind of fascinating. This is, you think about satellites up in the air and you think about Elon Musk and you think about SpaceX, but there are other players, including Amazon and AST Space Mobile, and this is a company that has been kicking up satellites into the air, kind of low orbit, but it's also all about really reaching kind of the cellular space, and this one has just been on a tear.
Yeah, they're partnering with AT&T and Verizon, whereas SpaceX is Starlink has partnered with T-Mobile, and he was telling us that the signal can actually get through one wall.
One wall.
So like if you're in a building somewhere, it can get through one wall. So it's not going to get in like a cell phone can, but better than, if you have a Garmin or something and you're inside, it doesn't necessarily work. So sort of better technology.
This is another outperformer this year. It's up about 200% year to date. Right now, though, 20% of the float is short, but nonetheless interesting. If you missed that interview, by the way, flipping my hair, you can check it out at Bloomberg.com.
Well, let's talk about some decliners. I want to talk about the biggest decliner on a points basis in the S&P 500. That would be Tesla, down 5.1%. Interestingly enough, shares were up as much as 2.5% earlier in the session, then turned lower. The company did report a surprise record quarter of vehicle sales. This as U.S. consumers accelerated EV purchases before those federal tax credits expired. Still, though, analysts are concerned about what things look like moving forward. Garrett Nelson over at CFRA said, looking forward, we still think there are major questions regarding the earnings impact of legislative changes on the tradable emissions credit market and EV demand in an unsubsidized U.S. market. Shares down 5.1% today. The second worst performer on a percentage basis in the S&P 500, that goes to Occidental Petroleum. Shares fell more than 7% today after the company agreed to sell its OxyChem petrochemical unit to Berkshire Hathaway for about $9.7 billion in cash. Analysts did note that the sale is below the $10 billion that they had been expecting. Also, Vicky Holub, the company's CEO, came out and said that the focus is now on organic growth after using about $6.5 billion of the proceeds from this sale to reduce principal debt at the company. Once again, Oxy shares down 7.3%. And finally, Equifax, off of what Carol was saying, Equifax down 8.5%. It is the worst performer in the S&P 500 today. Shares of credit reporting companies, including Equifax, plunged after Fair Isaac announced this new program that gives mortgage lenders the option to calculate and distribute FICO scores directly to customers. It's a major shift in how FICO scores are delivered in the mortgage industry.
Let's take a quick look at yields. A mixed day here. You did see the longer end of the curve continue to see yields move lower for the third day this week. Meanwhile, on the shorter end, you did see a slight uptick in yields. But we should just point out one of the fallouts of the government shutdown is because of that lack of data, volume in the Treasury market is incredibly light. Of course, remember, volume typically spikes around some of those big government data releases. And of course, not getting the weekly jobless claims today, and of course, not getting the monthly jobless unemployment numbers tomorrow here. So just take some of the price action with a bit of a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow, no doubt about it. Hey, let's take a look at some stories that have definitely caught our attention. If you're worried about Taylor Swift, there is still some uncertainty about the environment.
What?
Don't worry.
The environment.
Well, there are some questions about kind of what comes next, right? We do see some people who are struggling with jobs and so on and so forth. But when it comes to Taylor's world, she's definitely set. Was it last year that we marked her a billionaire? Mm-hmm. And now it turns out she's actually a $2 billion year. Can we say that? Two?
She's doubled?
Multi-billionaire?
Yeah, $2.1 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. It apparently has a lot to do with just the money she's made being Taylor Swift. They think that she's invested it pretty well, given that her father's an advisor at, is it Morgan Stanley? I didn't know. I thought he was a
I know.
I thought he was a Christmas tree farmer.
I
thought he was a Christmas tree farmer.
Wait,
guys.
I'm confused. I thought she was like
She grew up on a Christmas tree farm, but I understand that, maybe it was more of a side hustle for the family because her father did have some financial advisor roots, but also she's, a grown woman and smart on her own, so that probably helped too.
Merrill Lynch, excuse me.
There
Merrill
you go,
Lynch,
thank you.
Correction.
But her new album comes out tomorrow, I'm psyched, so that's probably going to add another cool $1 billion or so.
Are you dressing up and going to this movie thing or something?
I don't think I'm that excited, but I am excited to listen to it on the path home.
The only interesting thing about Taylor Swift, at least that I would have, is like actually where is she putting her money? And you talk about this idea sort of where to invest. Carol Massar, don't interrupt me, Carol. Did you take a look at OpenAI's valuation? $500 billion, the latest funding round here. I don't know.
Money,
Did Taylor Swift invest in that?
I would love to ask her. You know
I
what
feel
she
like
did?
she's in low-cost index
You know
funds.
what she did invest in?
No.
Yeah, that's very
No,
funny.
not a chance.
She's buying munis, tax-free munis. No, she did buy back, remember her catalog?
Yeah.
And that's a really, really big chunk of her wealth, so.
I've heard, yeah.